They slammed the final beam into the ground at dawn. That's how I first realized something was terribly wrong. My grandfather's ranch, once a sprawling testament to old-world grit and family heritage, had been violated in a way I couldn't quite fathom. I spotted the heavy machinery clustered near the southern pasture, an area that had always been kept wild for our horses. Now it was buzzing with construction crews, half-assembled gates, and stacks of materials piled taller than a grown man. At first, I almost thought I'd taken a wrong turn. But no, the battered ranch sign, Rancho Langford, Est, 1912, was right there, only a few yards away, glaring in defiance of the chaos beyond. My heart pounded. Who on earth dared to build an entire gated community in plain sight, as if I wouldn't notice? And how had they gotten this far before I discovered their scheme? I yanked my truck to a stop, dust billowing around my tires. Stepping out, I surveyed the damage. The land I remembered from childhood, with gentle rolling hills, prickly pear cacti, and the old stable, had been carved up by newly laid roads. A row of skeletal structures, house frames, 2 stories tall, dotted the horizon. Strange fences partitioned off sections of the ranch, turning open range into a subdivided puzzle. My pulse quickened with anger, disbelief, and something close to grief. This place wasn't just real estate. It was a living memory of my grandfather's legacy, a testament to the sweat, tears, and pride that shaped this ranch through generations. I marched toward a flimsy construction trailer perched near the half-finished houses, ignoring the suspicious glances from a few workers in neon vests. They paused mid-hammer, watching me approach, with the stride of a man who had more authority than they understood. My mother once told me I had my grandfather's stubborn look, the set of my jaw, the furrow in my brow. Right then, I hoped that was enough to show I meant business. Inside the trailer, I expected a generic foreman, maybe a clerk. Instead, I found a woman in a sleek blazer, her posture radiating confidence, standing before a table filled with building plans. She raised an eyebrow at my abrupt entrance, her sharp gaze flicked to the ID badge clipped to my belt, though she probably couldn't read it clearly from across the room. "I'm Mary Kensington," she said briskly, barely waiting for me to speak. "HOA president of Oakwood Trails, overseeing the expansion. If you're here about permits, you're a bit late. We broke ground 2 weeks ago." Her tone dripped with condescension, as if she were the rightful owner of this place and I was the intruder. My jaw clenched. "This ranch belongs to my family," I said, voice tight. "It's not for sale, nor open to any expansions. Whatever you're building here, you need to halt it immediately." She blinked once, then gave a short, dismissive laugh. "I'm afraid you're mistaken," she replied, straightening her blazer lapel. "The Homeowners Association purchased this land through our developer's arrangement, with the county's blessing. We're building 18 gated homes for our members. We have official documents, so if you have a complaint, take it up with the county, but the project isn't stopping for random busybodies." Blood pounded in my ears. The arrogance stunned me. This woman, standing on my family's ground, telling me to step aside? Did she even realize who I was? Probably not. People rarely recognized me on sight. They saw a broad-shouldered guy in worn boots, not the feared county prosecutor who spent his days taking criminals to court and winning. I took a measured breath. "My name is Graham Langford," I said quietly. Each word clipped. "My grandfather was Charles Langford, the original owner. This ranch was never sold. If someone claims otherwise, they're lying. And if you don't stop building, you'll face consequences." She arched an eyebrow, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. Then she forced a thin smile. "We have every legal right," she repeated, turning away as if done with the conversation. My anger flared. "You might want to check your so-called legal right," I retorted, stepping closer, "because if I find out you forged documents or bribed a clerk, I'll prosecute you." "That's not a threat, Miss Kensington. That's a promise." She whirled around, eyes narrowed. "Who are you to threaten me with prosecution?" The corner of my mouth twitched in the slightest grin. So, she didn't know yet. "I'm the county prosecutor," I said simply, letting that sink in. Her face shifted from annoyance to uneasy suspicion. "Then you should know better than to barge in," she snapped, though her voice trembled. "We'll see you in court if you want to push it. But right now, I'm busy." She made a dismissive gesture. My gut burned with frustration. Clearly, she was used to bulldozing objections. I recognized the type, an HOA queen who believed she could bend rules with money and bravado. I turned on my heel, leaving without another word. Let her think she'd chased me off. In reality, I had no intention of letting them keep building a single day longer, but I also knew I had to proceed systematically, gather evidence, confirm property records, ensure the county recognized the ranch still in my family's name. By the end of the day, I wanted to have a court order shutting down the entire project. Driving to the county offices, I called my mother, who still lived near the ranch though not on it. She answered, her voice laced with worry. "You're sure they built on Grandpa's land? That can't be right. I'd have heard if anything changed hands." I exhaled slowly. The confusion and anger weighed on me. "I saw it with my own eyes," I said. "They're putting up gates, building houses. Something's rotten. Did you sign anything, or did you find any suspicious letters from real estate agents?" She insisted there was nothing, which only sharpened my suspicion that we were dealing with forged documents or official corruption. When I reached the county clerk's office, I requested all recent land transactions involving the ranch. The clerk typed my request, frowning at her screen. "We have a record that part of the Langford Ranch was subdivided last month," she said uncertainly. "It's under the name Oakwood Trails Development. The sale was processed quickly. No extended review." Strange. I clenched my teeth. No extended review? For farmland to be rezoned for housing typically requires public hearings. Did that happen? She shrugged. "Not that I recall. The file is thin. You might want to speak to the zoning board." The mention of the zoning board ignited a fresh wave of frustration. Usually, I worked with them daily, cracking down on unscrupulous developments. But the county was large, and I couldn't be everywhere at once. If someone in the board had been bribed or neglected standard procedure, that would explain how the HOA slipped under the radar. I thanked the clerk, grabbed copies of the suspicious documents, and drove across town to the zoning department. It was a small, cluttered office stacked with old maps and recent proposals. I found Mark Avery, a longtime zoning official who typically handled farmland issues. "Mark," I said, brandishing the forms, "how the hell did Oakwood Trails get approval to build gated homes on the Langford Ranch?" He blinked, adjusting his glasses. "I didn't approve anything for that ranch," he said, perplexed. "Wait, let me check the system." He typed away, eyes narrowing. "This says the approval came through a temporary expedited process, signed by a board member named Nancy Carter. But Nancy's only supposed to handle minor modifications like fence heights, not major rezoning. This is definitely not her area." My heart pounded. So we had a smoking gun. Nancy Carter, a minor staffer, had apparently authorized a large-scale project without the rest of the board's knowledge. The question was she bribed? Threatened? The whole fiasco stank of corruption. "Get me copies of everything Nancy Carter filed," I told Mark. "I need them for an emergency complaint. I'm shutting this down." Mark nodded, looking rattled. "Consider it done," he said, hurrying off to produce the records. Armed with the property documents and the suspicious zoning approvals, I marched back to my office, my mind racing. As county prosecutor, I had the authority to file an injunction if the development was based on illegal or fraudulent grounds. Meanwhile, I called my staff attorney, a sharp young woman named Danielle Price, who specialized in land disputes. "Danielle," I said, "we have a rogue HOA building on my grandfather's ranch. I suspect they forged or bribed for rezoning. Let's get an immediate restraining order to halt construction. I want it filed in court by tomorrow morning." She asked for details. I gave her everything. She whistled. "This is big," she said. "We'll go for a temporary injunction, then gather evidence for permanent relief." The next day, we marched into the county courthouse for an emergency hearing. Danielle carried a thick file of evidence while I stifled a swirl of personal rage. Ms. Kensington was nowhere to be seen, sending one of her lawyers instead, an older man in a too expensive suit. He tried to argue that the HOA had purchased the land in good faith, that the zoning approval was valid, that halting construction would cause irreparable financial harm. Danielle calmly tore his arguments to shreds. She pointed out the rushed rezoning, the questionable signature from Nancy Carter, and the lack of any real sale from the Langford family. The judge, a middle-aged woman with a no-nonsense air, frowned heavily at the defense. By the end, she granted our temporary injunction, ordering the HOA to stop all work until the matter was resolved. I felt a surge of relief but also a thrum of tension. These HOAs could be defiant. I half expected them to keep building. Sure enough, I got a phone call that afternoon from one of my investigators. "They're still pouring concrete out here," he reported. My blood boiled. That was direct contempt of court. "Document everything," I said. "Video if possible. We'll bring them back into court for contempt." So the cat and mouse game began. Miss Kensington, who apparently believed herself untouchable, insisted publicly that my family secretly sold the ranch. She repeated the claim that the county gave them full clearance. News of the fiasco spread around town. Some believed her, others knew me as the no-nonsense prosecutor who'd never let a scam stand. On the second day of the injunction, I personally drove out to the ranch, confronted the construction workers who tried to keep building. My presence rattled them. They froze, uncertain. When I flashed the court order, they reluctantly stopped, but one of them muttered that the HOA boss demanded they continue or lose their jobs. Furious, I scheduled a contempt hearing for Miss Kensington that very week. The day arrived with a tense hush in the courthouse. She showed up in a tailored suit, chin held high, with the same expensive suited lawyer at her side. I brought Danielle. The judge wasted no time, referencing multiple witness accounts that workers continued building after the injunction. The lawyer tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, but the judge was unimpressed. She threatened daily fines plus potential arrests if the HOA defied the order again. Mrs. Kensington swallowed, but her defiance was clear in her tight-lipped expression. "We'll comply," she managed, though every syllable oozed resentment. For a time it seemed they did comply. The site fell quiet, no new walls rose. My staff attorney rummaged deeper, unearthing shocking details. The so-called sale was indeed a forgery, with a phony signature of my deceased grandfather. That alone was enough to unravel their entire claim. Meanwhile, the suspicious zoning official Nancy Carter vanished on leave, presumably dodging the fallout. We built a criminal case too, charging HOA board members with conspiracy if we proved they orchestrated these lies. Miss Kensington, however, tried to maintain an air of legitimacy, telling the press it was all a bureaucratic snag. But then came the final straw. One evening, I got an urgent call from a local ranch hand who sometimes patrolled the property's perimeter. "Boss," he whispered, voice tense, "they're working at night again, running floodlights, mixing cement." My fists clenched. "Get me video," I growled. He did. The footage showed several workers, presumably under Miss Kensington's orders, continuing construction under cover of darkness. That was brazen contempt of court, enough to push for immediate arrests. At dawn, I arrived with sheriff deputies in tow, a single chain-link fence now cordoned off the site, topped with barbed wire. A security guard tried to block us, but the deputies had a clear warrant. We advanced. Inside, we caught 5 workers in the act of erecting new gating around a partially finished house. They froze when they saw the uniforms. One tried to run, but the deputies called out, "Sheriff's office, stop!" They complied. Furious, I demanded to know who authorized this. One worker, trembling, confessed they'd been told the injunction didn't matter, that the HOA would handle it. We found Miss Kensington standing near a half-finished house, arms crossed, glaring as we approached. "This is private property," she spat. "You can't just barge in." I whipped out the warrant. "Court order for contempt," I stated, voice taut. "We have evidence you violated the injunction. The deputies are authorized to arrest you and shut down every operation here." Her face paled. "You can't," she began, but a deputy stepped forward with handcuffs. She recoiled. "You're not actually arresting me?" The deputy nodded grimly. "Yes, ma'am." "Unless you want to sign an immediate compliance agreement?" She caved, tears welling in her eyes, stammering that she'd stop everything, but it was too late for that. The judge's instructions were crystal clear. Second violation, immediate arrests. The deputy read her rights while she fumed, calling me every insult under the sun. You're destroying families' future homes, she spat, tears of rage on her cheeks. Those are my grandpa's fields you bulldozed, I retorted. You brought this on yourself. So they cuffed her, along with 2 board members who arrived to see what the fuss was about. The entire fiasco played out under a blazing midday sun, a surreal tableau of half-built houses, silent construction machines, and outraged HOA leaders in custody. After that meltdown, the county commissioners had enough. They voted to seize the half-completed structures for potential demolition. My legal team pressed forward with the forgery allegations, building a robust criminal case. Meanwhile, my mother wept at the sight of the ranch turned into a construction graveyard. I can hardly recognize it, she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. He'd be heartbroken. I wrapped an arm around her. We'll fix it, I promised. We'll restore it. They're not getting away with this. In the weeks that followed, Miss Kensington posted bail and tried orchestrating a PR campaign, painting me as a tyrannical prosecutor who hated development. But the public quickly sided with the man whose ranch was stolen with forged deeds. Media coverage hammered the HOA, calling them reckless. Some HOA members, incensed, blamed Miss Kensington for dragging them into a criminal conspiracy. She lost support fast. By the time the criminal trial opened, the evidence was overwhelming. A falsified signature from a man who'd been dead for years, shady rezoning approvals from a bribed official, and repeated violations of the court's injunction. Ms. Kensington's lawyer struggled to mount a defense. I personally prosecuted the case, a rarity for me to handle land disputes myself. But this was personal. In the packed courtroom, I laid out every detail from the Rush subdivision to the after-hours building sprees. The jury listened, rapt, as I revealed each piece of documented proof. Miss Kensington's face grew paler by the hour. Cross-examination was brutal. Her own contractor testified that she'd demanded they keep building, injunction or not, promising she had powerful friends. Another witness described hush money offered to the zoning official who vanished. It all pointed to a web of corruption. On the final day, Miss Kensington took the stand, trying to feign ignorance. She insisted she'd trusted the developer, but the jury seemed unconvinced. The prosecution's final statement hammered home the arrogance and deliberate lawbreaking. I ended with a quiet, firm line. She trampled a family's inheritance, a ranch built on honest labor. She weaponized an HOA's funds to defy the law. Now she must face accountability. The jury deliberated less than a day. They found Miss Kensington guilty on multiple felony counts, including forgery, conspiracy, and contempt of court. The judge, exasperated by her disregard for the law, sentenced her to prison time plus restitution. The half-finished gated homes, seized by the county, were slated for demolition, their remnants cleared from the ranch. Meanwhile, we discovered more evidence of bribery, leading to additional charges for other complicit officials. The scandal rocked local politics. But for me, the highlight was the day the bulldozers arrived to tear down the villas, returning the land to open space. My mother stood with me, holding my arm, tears of relief on her face. "Grandpa's land can breathe again," she murmured. The demolition was swift, dramatic. Steel beams toppled, newly poured foundations shattered under hydraulic hammers. For some, it was a tragic end to an expensive dream. For me, it was justice. A chance for the ranch to heal. By the time the dust cleared, only rubble remained, soon hauled away by trucks. Under the settlement terms, the HOA had to pay for the cleanup, plus partial restoration of the land. It wouldn't instantly bring back the wild grasses or the sense of untouched legacy, but at least it halted further desecration. In the aftermath, the county declared the entire ranch protected once again, free from any future attempts at unauthorized development. We installed a new fence along the original boundaries with a sign reading, "Langford Ranch, established 1921, trespassers will be prosecuted." The final irony. Ms. Kensington had thought herself unstoppable, backed by an HOA treasury. She had no idea I was the feared county prosecutor, fully prepared to crush illegal expansions. She found out the hard way. People in town sometimes ask if I'm proud or if I regret how harshly I slammed them. I tell them the truth. I regret the ranch was ever scarred by half-finished homes, but I don't regret enforcing the law. My grandfather always taught me that good land management meant standing up for what's right, even if it's unpopular. You can't sell out your home, your heritage, he'd say. Otherwise, it's gone forever. I used the full weight of my office to ensure no one else would dare pull a similar stunt, stealing land on false pretenses, forging deeds, ignoring court orders. Months later, the ranch is slowly reviving. Grass seeds have been sown over the raw patches. The stable stands proud again. We're even bringing in a few horses. My mother helps oversee small gatherings, teaching local kids about ranch life. The air smells clean, carrying faint hints of hay and mesquite, not the industrial stench of diesel. The first time I rode out on horseback at sunrise, seeing that open sky untainted by rows of cookie-cutter homes, tears threatened to well up. It felt like Grandpa was right there, tipping his hat, proud of me for keeping his vision alive. As for Miss Kensington and her cohorts, they remain cautionary tales. The HOA faced crippling fines, and many members turned on her, claiming she'd misled them. She was left with lawsuits from investors who lost money on the doomed project. Rumor says she still curses my name, claiming she was this close to a real estate triumph. I shrug. Real estate triumph on stolen land means nothing but heartbreak in the end. If she'd approached me or the county properly, maybe we could have found a tiny area near the edges, done a smaller development that respected the ranch's heritage, but she chose greed, deception, and a blatant disregard for the law. Once she trampled over my grandfather's legacy, she sealed her fate. Sometimes late at night, I'll step onto the porch, sip a mug of coffee, and gaze over the starlit fields. The hush of the wind through the grass is the same hush that lulled me to sleep as a boy, dreaming of riding fence lines with Grandpa. Those memories used to be overshadowed by the threat of losing everything to unscrupulous developers, but not anymore. The ranch stands as a testament to perseverance, a reminder that the law can protect what's precious, so long as good people refuse to bow to intimidation. I realized the entire fiasco shaped me too. I've prosecuted drug dealers, corrupt politicians, violent criminals, but rarely had I encountered an HOA queen so brazen she'd carve up private farmland for her own gain. It forced me to tap into every ounce of determination, both as a man protecting his inheritance and as a prosecutor upholding justice. Now I feel stronger, more resolute, because I've proved even the mightiest and most well-funded HOA can't outmuscle the rule of law, especially not when the land in question belongs to a determined family and a feared county prosecutor itching to defend it. If anyone reading this wonders how close we came to losing it all, the answer is dangerously close. Another few weeks and the houses might have been completed, sold to unsuspecting buyers. Then tearing them down would be more complicated. We got lucky, or perhaps my family's ranch was always meant to endure. Regardless, we saved it in time. Now, no matter what new scheme emerges in the county, some shady developer, another overreaching HOA, I've shown them the out. My grandfather's ranch remains ours. The land is free and open, the final resting place of his unshakable dreams. Every so often, someone from the ranching community drops by to offer a friendly grin, saying, "Heard you taught that HOA a lesson." They ask how it felt. My answer is always measured. It felt necessary. That's all. Because no matter how big your budget, how slick your paperwork, you can't just crush people's heritage or break the law and expect to walk away scot-free. If you try to build 18 gated homes on my grandfather's ranch, find out too late I'm the feared county prosecutor, well, then you're doomed indeed. And that's the moral of this story. The land stands, the rightful owners remain, and justice triumphs over greed. So if you ever see those short stumps of rebar sticking from the earth on a quiet back road in our county, remember what used to be there, the shells of an HOA's grand vision, toppled by the unstoppable force of truth. That rebar stands as a reminder of the line that can't be crossed. Grandfather's ranch lives on, a testament that sometimes old-fashioned values and the might of the law can still protect a piece of American heritage. And me? September 2nd, if you were Cret and open fields where my story began. And me, I keep doing my job, keep my badge on the corner of my desk. And me, I keep doing my job, keep my ranch can land you on the wrong side of the law.